My ex-boyfriend spent 3 years criticizing everything about me. My clothes, my laugh, even how I held my fork. He said I wasn't elegant enough for his family's charity gala. So I showed up anyway, with someone who made him realize what real class actually looks like. Before we dive into this story of the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed, smash that like button if you've ever had someone try to change who you are. And subscribe because trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. You know that moment when you realize you've been living someone else's version of your life? Mine came at 26, standing in a dressing room mirror, staring at a beige dress that made me look like I was attending my own funeral. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got there. 3 years earlier, I met Marcus at a college party. He was charming, confident, the kind of guy who knew exactly what wine to order and could make anyone laugh. When he asked me out, I felt like I won some kind of lottery. Here was this polished, sophisticated man who saw something in me, little old me from a middle-class family, who still got excited about 2-for-1 pizza deals. First, Marcus made me feel special. He'd take me to fancy restaurants I'd never heard of, introduce me to his friends from law school, bring me flowers just because. I thought I was living in a fairy tale. But fairy tales, as I learned the hard way, can quickly turn into nightmares when you're not paying attention to the fine print. It started so subtly I almost missed it. Maybe try a different lipstick color, he'd say, tilting his head like he was considering a painting. That red is a bit loud for dinner. I thought he was trying to help me fit in with his world, so I bought a softer pink. Then it was my laugh. You laugh quite loudly, don't you? My mother notices these things. So I started covering my mouth when I laughed, making my joy smaller, quieter, more acceptable. The changes happened gradually, like being slowly boiled alive. Each criticism felt reasonable on its own. That dress is pretty casual for this restaurant. Maybe don't tell that story about your dad's fishing trip. It's not really their type of humor. You hold your fork a bit differently than most people do. I found myself second-guessing everything: my clothes, my words, even my facial expressions. I was becoming a stranger to myself, and I thought that meant I was growing. The real test came with his family's annual charity gala. This wasn't just any party. This was the social event of the year for Marcus's family. His mother, Patricia, was the kind of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and could make you feel inadequate with a single raised eyebrow. The previous year had been torture. I spent the entire evening feeling like I was wearing a costume that didn't quite fit, fielding passive-aggressive comments about my interesting background and unique perspective. This year, Marcus sat me down a month before the event. "Sarah," he said, taking my hands in that way that made me think something romantic was coming. "I think you should work on being more elegant, refined. You know what I mean." The way he said it, like he was doing me this enormous favor by pointing out my shortcomings, made my stomach drop. But I nodded. I always nodded. The shopping trip was my personal hell disguised as a romantic afternoon. Marcus had taken the day off work to help me find the perfect dress. But nothing I liked was right. The blue one was too bright. The black one was too casual. The red one made me look like I was trying too hard. Finally, he selected a beige, shapeless thing that looked like it belonged in a church basement, not a ballroom. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The woman staring back at me looked defeated, invisible, like she was apologizing for taking up space. "Perfect," Marcus said, beaming. "Very understated. Very appropriate." The sales clerk, a woman around my age, caught my eye in the mirror. I saw pity there, and it made me want to disappear entirely. But Marcus wasn't done with his improvement project. The week before the gala, he announced we were having etiquette lessons. I thought he was joking until he brought out an actual wine glass and started demonstrating the proper way to hold it. He taught me how to walk without moving my shoulders too much, how to laugh without being disruptive, even how to modulate my voice to be more refined. "Sarah, I love you," he said during one of these sessions, "but you need to understand my family has standards. If we're going to have a future together, you need to be able to fit into this world." The worst part? I believed him. I thought love meant molding yourself into whatever shape someone else needed you to be. The breaking point came 2 days before the gala. I was in Marcus's kitchen making us dinner when his phone rang. He stepped onto the balcony to take the call, but the sliding door didn't close all the way. I heard every word. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm training her. She'll be presentable eventually." Training. Like I was a dog he was housebreaking. "She's got good bones, you know? Just needs some polish. If she can't adapt, well, there are other options." Other options. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, feeling like someone had just poured ice water through my veins. This wasn't love. This was a project. I was his fixer-upper girlfriend, and he was telling his mother about his backup plan in case I couldn't be properly renovated. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the woman I used to be. The one who laughed too loud at bad movies, who wore bright colors because they made me happy, who told embarrassing stories about my family because I loved them. When had I decided that version of myself wasn't good enough? When had I agreed to become this muted, beige version of a person? The next morning I waited until Marcus left for work. Then I called in sick to my job and spent the day thinking. By the time he came home, I knew what I had to do. "We need to talk," I said as soon as he walked through the door. "About what?" "The gala's tomorrow, Sarah. We don't have time for drama." Drama. That's what he called it when I had feelings about being systematically erased. "I'm done," I said simply. "I can't do this anymore." He actually laughed. "Can't do what? Get dressed up and go to a party? Sarah, you're being ridiculous." "No, Marcus. I can't pretend to be someone else anymore. I can't keep shrinking myself to fit into your life. I'm done." The color drained from his face. "But the gala is tomorrow. I already told everyone you're coming. My mother is expecting you. Then find someone more elegant to take." I used his word deliberately, and I saw him flinch. He tried everything: pleading, anger, promises to change. Finally, he got mean. "You'll never find anyone better than me, Sarah. Look at yourself. Look at where you come from. I was trying to help you become something more." That's when I knew I was making the right choice. The right person would never make me feel like I needed to become something more. I packed my things that night and stayed with my brother. The next day was supposed to be the gala. I spent the morning crying, not because I missed Marcus, but because I mourned the 3 years I'd spent trying to become acceptable to someone who should have been celebrating me exactly as I was. My brother David kept bringing me tissues and ice cream, but nothing seemed to help. That's when James called. James Henderson had been David's best friend since high school. I'd had a crush on him back then, but he was older, sophisticated in a way that seemed effortless rather than performed. He'd moved to New York after college for work and had just moved back to town the month before. "David told me what happened," he said when I answered the phone through my tears. "I'm sorry, Sarah. Marcus is an idiot." "Thanks," I sniffled. "I just feel so stupid. I wasted 3 years trying to become someone I'm not." "You're not stupid. You're kind. There's a difference." There was a pause. "Can I ask you something crazy?" At this point, why not? Want to show him what actual class looks like? It turned out James had been invited to the very same gala. His family were major donors to the charity, had been for generations. He'd been planning to skip it, but when he heard about my situation, he had a different idea. "I'm not suggesting this for revenge," he said when we met for coffee an hour later. "I'm suggesting it because you deserve to see how you should be treated. You deserve to remember who you are when you're not trying to be someone else." James took me shopping, but it was nothing like the nightmare trip with Marcus. He asked me what I liked, what made me feel confident, what colors made me happy. When I hesitated, still programmed to defer to someone else's taste, he gently pushed back. "What do you think, Sarah? Not what you think I want to hear, not what Marcus would have said. What do you think?" I chose an emerald green dress that made me feel like myself again, confident, vibrant, alive. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I used to be smiling back at me. The night of the gala, James picked me up in his Tesla. Not because he was trying to show off, but because that's just what he drove. He complimented my dress. then asked about my work, my family, my dreams. When I really laughed loud and genuine, he didn't flinch. He laughed with me. Walking into that ballroom on James's arm felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. I was myself again. The woman who wore bright colors and told funny stories and laughed without covering her mouth. And people loved her. Marcus was there with his new date, some socialite his mother had undoubtedly selected from a catalog of appropriate women. I saw his jaw drop when he spotted me. This confident, glowing woman in the emerald dress must have been a stranger to him. He'd never seen me like this because he'd never allowed me to be like this. James knew everyone, and not because he was trying to impress them, but because he was genuinely interested in people. He asked about their children, their work, their passions. He introduced me not as his project or his plus one, but as Sarah, and then he'd share something interesting about me, my work with local charities, my photography hobby, something that made me feel seen and valued. I watched Marcus watching us from across the room. His new date was checking her phone and complaining about the music. Meanwhile, people kept gravitating toward James and me, drawn to our genuine laughter and conversation. The moment that will stay with me forever came when Marcus's mother, Patricia, approached us. I braced myself for her usual passive-aggressive comments, but instead she was gushing. "James, how wonderful to see you. Your family's support means everything to this organization." Then she turned to me with actual warmth. "And Sarah, you look absolutely radiant tonight. That color is stunning on you." I nearly choked on my champagne. This was the same woman who'd spent last year making subtle digs about my background. "Thank you," I managed. "James, you simply must introduce Sarah to the Worthingtons. I have a feeling they'd love to hear about her work with the literacy program." As Patricia walked away, I turned to James in amazement. "What just happened?" He smiled. "You happened. You being yourself with confidence. That's all you ever needed." The evening got even better. Marcus finally worked up the courage to approach us during the cocktail hour. He appeared at my elbow with that fake smile I knew so well. "Sarah, you look different," he said, his eyes taking in my dress, my posture, my genuine smile. "She looks happy," James said before I could respond. "I don't believe we've been introduced properly. James Henderson." I watched Marcus's face change as he registered the name. The Henderson family were old money, the kind of people Marcus had always tried to impress. This wasn't some random guy I'd picked up to make him jealous. This was someone who belonged in this world in a way Marcus could only dream of. "Marcus Webb," he replied, his voice smaller than usual. "Ah, Sarah's ex," James said pleasantly. "She's told me so much about you." The conversation was perfectly polite and absolutely devastating. James didn't need to be cruel or cutting. His mere presence, his ease in this environment, his obvious respect for me, it all highlighted everything Marcus wasn't. Here was a man who possessed the genuine sophistication Marcus had tried so hard to perform. As the evening progressed, the contrast became even more stark. Marcus's date got progressively drunker and louder, eventually causing a minor scene by the dessert table. Meanwhile, James and I were invited to join the VIP donor table, where I found myself in fascinating conversations about art, travel, and social causes. I caught Marcus watching me from across the room as I laughed at something the museum director was saying. In that moment, I saw the recognition in his eyes. This was who I had always been: bright, engaging, worthy of respect. He'd just been too busy trying to dim my light to notice it was there. The real victory wasn't that I looked beautiful or that I was sitting at the important table. It was that I felt like myself again. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't apologizing for taking up space or monitoring my laugh or checking my posture. I was just Sarah, and that was enough. More than enough. James and I didn't end up together romantically. He was moving back to New York for work, and we both knew this night was about something bigger than potential romance. It was about remembering my worth. But he showed me something invaluable. He showed me what it felt like to be celebrated exactly as I was. If this story reminded you that you're perfect exactly as you are, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe for more stories about people who learn to value themselves, and remember, never let anyone dim your light to make themselves feel brighter. What's your story of finding your confidence? Drop it in the comments below.